Hello, and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry. Tonight, I want to talk about buzzwords. In particular, I want to talk about one that seems to be popping up more and more in my life as an educator, and I want to talk about what it actually means and relate it to what's happening in your classroom, because chances are this is just another popular buzzword that is coming up, and it relates to a lot of the things you were already doing in your classroom, and perhaps will challenge you to do a few more things to really push your pedagogical practice. So tonight's buzzword is universal design. So thank you so much for joining me. My name is Patty, and I'm a junior grade teacher here in Ontario, Canada, and I'm also the teacher blogger behind Madly Learning. And I come live every single Monday to talk to you about all things teaching and using inquiry-based learning. And I guess now we're going to be talking about universal design as well. So this is something that has been around for a while. It's been kind of a buzzword on the back burner, if you want to call it that way. But it definitely seems to be taking more of a forefront lately, as I've been hearing a lot more people in education, including consultants and other teachers, and some of your questioning, which leads me to believe that universal design happens to be the word of the moment to describe what good teaching and learning looks like in your classroom. As with a lot of new buzzwords as they come out, there is still a lot of good teaching that is wrapped up in universal design, but chances are there's probably a lot of things that you are already doing. If you are a loyal viewer of Teaching with Inquiry, then chances are a lot of the inquiry-based practices that I've been talking about and you've been using in your classroom make a very good fit to universal design. It's just a matter of looking at how you're doing and how they fit into the universal design pedagogy, and how you can perhaps push and change and rethink about the ways you are doing things in your classroom. So when I was first hearing this, I was like, okay, is this something brand new, or is this something that I got to get ahead of, or is this something that I'm already kind of doing in my classroom and I just need to actually look at teaching from perhaps a different lens? So I looked up a lot of information, found a lot of good information on what exactly is universal design from both understand.org as well as the province of Alberta. Their education department does have a bit of background information on exactly what it is. I'm not talking about reading whole books at this point. I don't have time for that. But I was looking at just the background information of what exactly universal design for learning means. And essentially, it breaks it down into looking at making learning and teaching accessible to a variety of learners. And what is good for some is going to be good for all of your learners. Now, this is something that I have intrinsically adopted for myself for a while without perhaps maybe calling it universal design. But I do firmly believe that I would like to hide students who may have learning issues in plain sight, and the things that I do for them are going to be good teaching for almost all of my students. So some of the systems and processes and ways I present information in my classroom is beneficial to those students, but it is also beneficial to all of my students to have a variety of ways. So I want to go over what the universal design is, and then I'm going to tell you how I practically use that in my classroom. So universal design generally comes down to there's three different elements of universal design, and that is representation, action and expression, and engagement. Now, when you're looking at what those mean is if you're looking at representation, you're looking at allowing students to gain that information into their knowledge, so to get information to them through multiple means. And you don't want to just present it in one way, but you want to present it in multiple ways. It breaks it down further in terms of students producing work for you and their ability to express their ideas. You again want to be able to give them more than one way to be able to express their ideas. So if every single person in your classroom is writing the same test and there is exactly the same and there's no variety, then perhaps that's going to be not so much a universal design activity. Different from perhaps differentiation in the traditional sense, meaning that you give different things to different kids. And universal design is a tweak on differentiation in the idea that what you are providing for one student is going to be good for all students. Now, we're not talking the difference between accommodations and modifications. Obviously, there's students that will require modifications, but how you can present that information is going to be more open-ended to students. Looking at the third component of universal design is engagement. And this is a lot of those inquiry pieces coming back in, where you are bringing in student voice and choice and ensuring that the activities that your students are doing are driven by student interest, as well as allowing their voice and choices to be heard and understood when you are going ahead and planning different activities for your class. So if that's what universal design is, what does that actually look like practically in the classroom? So if I reflect on some of the things that I am doing in the classroom, and chances are you are doing too, let's look at what we can do to make our classroom a better example of a universal designed learning space so that we can really reframe our understanding of how to make our classrooms a little bit better. So if we're looking at representation, now that is how we can present the information so that students can learn it. When I'm giving information, it's always important, if I'm looking at the variety of learners that are in my classroom, that I can't simply just present information in just one way. With the variety of learning needs that are in my classroom, there's learning disabilities, there's attention problems, there are social issues, then I have to be very conscious of how I'm presenting information to students to make sure that all of their multiple exceptionalities are able to get that information to them. So I do this by making sure that I'm presenting the information that I want to teach in a variety of ways. So giving students the opportunity to, number one, learn from me through modeled, shared, or guided instruction is important, where they're learning from me. But it also means that sometimes I will videotape me teaching a lesson so that students can watch it over and over again when I share it to them on, say, Google Classroom or into their Google Drive accounts, or put it on YouTube. They can view those lessons multiple times. Now, for some students, they only need to see it the first time when I'm presenting it live. For other students, it is beneficial for them to hear it multiple times. But making that video of me teaching that lesson, making that available to all of my students, allows them to decide whether or not it's something they need to watch multiple times. It's intended specifically for one or two students that benefit from that kind of instruction, the repeated and rehearsed instruction, but all students then have access to it. It also means that I will use peer tutoring as well. So I will ask students to self-assess where they might be feeling on a learning skill or a learning focus for that week. And if students are feeling really, really confident, they'll give themselves a 4. If students are feeling less confident, they may give themselves a 1 or a 2. Then when I'm asking students to partner up to complete an activity, I will ask them to find a partner that is not self-assessing themselves at the same level as somebody else. So I don't want two students that are both self-assessing at a level 4, not a level 4 for assessment, but like a level, we use a modified stoplight, but a green. If they're self-assessing that they're green and ready to go, I don't want them working with another student that's self-assessing at the green. I want them to choose a student that might be self-assessing at a red or a yellow to make sure that they can help one another, because sometimes two students, a student who just got it and a student who is about to get it or hasn't quite gotten it yet, are a great way for students to get a second kind of voice to explain it in perhaps a kid-friendly way, even better than maybe I could, or they can sit one-on-one with students. And we will do this in a variety of subjects, so it's not always the same students that are self-assessing. And again, it's a self-assessment. I'm not the one assessing them on that. I also will make sure that I will include video tutorials that I have found online on different concepts. So whether it's, say, a grammar concept or a spelling rule, or I'm getting students to access our read aloud through some of the YouTube, or even through Epic, a digital resource that often has books read aloud to students, using Audible. All of those are available to my students so that they can take the read aloud, watch it again, get it into themselves in different formats. So some students are stronger visually, some students are stronger orally, some students are stronger auditorially, and some students are stronger kinesthetically. And we can really access and make sure that we are planning our lessons to allow students to be successful using multiple inputs. Now, it doesn't mean that a student who, say, prefers visual information as an input doesn't mean that that's the only way they can learn. They can learn other ways too, but providing those options gives a better option for all of our students. Again, that kind of stuff is great for some students because they need it, but it's also good for the rest of them too. So why not allow that to happen? The second aspect of universal design is expression. Now, this is how we are getting our assessment, allowing our students to express their understanding and their ideas. Now, the simplest thing to do to create a more universally designed learning environment is to allow your students multiple means of expressing what they know. Now, I've talked before about how this comes across as a show what you know project, simply giving them the learning goals of what it is that you're assessing them on. So whether or not they understand learning goal 1, learning goal 2, and learning goal 3, and allowing them the flexibility to come up with a way to show you that they understand those concepts, whether or not that's something as simple as they complete some questions out of a textbook, or they record themselves doing the work, or they are having a conversation with you about what it is they're doing, or they're making a video. They can do a variety of those things. So for example, my students this week are doing a project in math that will require them to decorate a 3D net and then assemble it. And the 3D net is decorated in triangles that they have to then measure the angles of the triangle and use a variety of triangles as they're decorating. Students will be kinesthetically assembling this 3D shape. I also have them trying to do a video of showing me how they can use a protractor to measure angles. They are drawing angles with a protractor. There's a lot of different ways that they can use this project, and there's different inputs. So there's a time where they can explain something to me. There's a time where they can show something to me in writing. There's other times where they are building and constructing. I have a set of 3D blocks that are there in my room that represent the shapes that I've given them. They get to pick which shape they are going to create their special package that they're going to decorate the outside of. They get to choose the shape. They get to decide the colors that they want to color their objects. They get to decide which triangles and how many triangles they're going to put in which patterns they want to put on this shape. And then they get to choose which triangles they're going to measure. They're going to measure them with a protractor and video this or demonstrate it to me live. And then they can work ahead on assembling this package for me. So there's lots of different inputs, lots of different curriculum expectations that are involved in this spiraled math project, but it's something where I really looked at the different skill sets of my students and decided what was going to be a common theme that we could get that could embed some choice into their ability to demonstrate the learning goals that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks in a consolidated project. Now, we've also already had a test on the same subject matter. So students had the opportunity to show me their learning in a traditional pencil and paper task, as well as through a more open-ended project. So there's lots of ways that they can show their learning through this. In other aspects of my class, such as writing, I will allow students to choose what writing form they're writing, and they will then choose the topics they're going to be writing, and they will write. They're required to write 2 pieces of writing per month throughout the entire term. They need to write different forms of writing that we have listed, that we've negotiated are the acceptable forms of writing for this year. So they need to make sure they've had multiple forms that are part of their portfolio collection over the term, and that they are making sure that they're choosing their own topics so that there's definitely more engagement. And students can choose as well to express their ideas through pencil and paper in their writing, or they can also use assistive technology. For a lot of my students, assistive technology is a need. They are more successful on it. Pencil and paper tasks are not appropriate for them. But instead of only making the assistive tech available just to the students who need it, assistive tech is available to all of my students if they want it. And this is another key pillar of the universal design, is the fact that just because it's good for some doesn't mean it's not good for all. Flexible seating and engagement. So we're looking at engagement as the third component, and this is where you're embedding a lot of choice into what you're doing in your classroom. So this could come down to simply flexible seating and allowing your students the opportunity for movement and moving around and deciding under what conditions their learning environment is going to be most successful. Not every student is going to be most successful sitting at their assigned seat, packed in sometimes like sardines, but allowing them to spread out, giving them a variety of options in which they are able to complete their work, in what environments, under what conditions. It's good for some, and therefore it's good for all students. My students actually were quite attached to a set of chairs that were in my classroom that unfortunately, due to health and safety, were asked to leave my classroom. So on Friday, very upset, my students decided, well, they were initially quite upset when I told them, but on Friday they did a commemorative PowerPoint presentation saying goodbye to my chairs. The chairs in the classroom were quite meaningful for them, even though they've been replaced. The chairs were quite meaningful for them because it represented a workspace for them that allowed them to be successful. That for some of my students who needed that movement, that needed different places to sit, these chairs were quite meaningful. And the fact that they were in my classroom and being told that they needed to leave made them quite upset and ready to take up a cause as to why outdoor furniture wasn't allowed inside the classroom. They have since been replaced, but there was a little bit of trepidatious feelings about whether or not these new chairs were going to be just as good as the old chairs. So it matters to students having that choice in the classroom as to where they're going to work. It's important to them, and it makes them feel like they're part of something in your classroom. It also means that they have choice boards and they have options of when they're going to do something, how they're going to do something, and why they're going to do something. You ask them their opinion, you get their feedback, you collaboratively come up with solutions to perhaps problems that they may encounter. Years ago, I had designed a trifold pamphlet for my word work, and every week I gave students a trifold pamphlet, and that was the word work activities that they needed to complete for the week. Well, it lasted about 3 months before students came to me in a community circle and said that they really didn't like these trifolds. I was really proud of them. I actually really liked these trifold folders for word work. However, my students said, you know what? They're not exactly the most fun, and there's a lot of cutting and pasting, and we could get it done a lot quicker if we didn't have to do all of. Had I been really stuck in my ways and said, okay, but this is what I designed to do, and this is what I want you to do, then they would have done it and probably not liked it. And it just would have continued that way. And I would have had less and less and less engagement in doing this word work. And they just would have been doing it to get it done. Instead, I took this as an opportunity to very clearly express to my students, well, this is what I'm required to do. I'm required to make sure that I have evidence of this learning, and this learning. So if I have evidence of this was my idea of how I could get that evidence. Let's brainstorm different ideas where I can still get the products that I need to be able to assess, but perhaps there's different ideas of how you could show me that work. And they came up with quite a few pretty good ideas of just different activities that they could do that were different or slightly different from these trifold pamphlets that we had created. Those have since moved on to other things, and we've moved ahead and done other things as a few years, but it was a great example of why listening to your students as they come up with ideas and giving them a little bit of ownership over what happens in the classroom helps to transform and also make your own teaching even better. So I hope that you really think and reflect on what in your classroom are you doing that allows multiple inputs when you are providing information allows multiple inputs when students are producing material for you to assess, as well as throughout the day providing your students more voice and choice over the tasks that they're doing. And reflect on how much you can reframe your thinking about looking at your classroom and teaching and planning from the perspective of a universal design model. My guess is, like you, when you dig into it, you're probably doing a lot of amazing things already. It's just a reframe of how you look at what you're doing in your classroom already. I hope this has given you some food for thought for today. And if you would like to learn more about universal design, you can read more about this in the upcoming blog post that will correspond with this video on www.madlylearning.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the new year. Bye for now.